Hi everyone and welcome to my first ever video. So today we're going to be looking at reading basic pitch notation and discussing why reading music is important to being a musician. So if you take a look in the description, you'll find a link to a free worksheet that will help guide you through this lesson. Feel free to pause the video and just go back over things that you're a little bit stuck with. So whether you're a beat maker, a home producer, a singer-songwriter, a performer, all or any of the above, reading music is a massive part of being a musician. So imagine it's like speech. You don't have to know how to read and write to be able to speak, but the more you can, it's only going to help to expand your vocabulary. So music's very much the same. You don't have to know how to read or write music, but the more you understand, it's just going to help you expand as a musician. So now I'm going to move over to the right and display some key icons that you're probably going to see in classical music notation. So I'm going to start with the stave. Those are the 5 horizontal lines that go upwards, and imagine, continuing the speech analogy, that they're like lines in a book. So we place the notes on them and they effectively make up the bread and butter of reading classical notation. So at the minute, as you can see, this stave's quite blank and doesn't really mean a lot to anybody. So the first thing we do is put a clef there. So if you imagine 88 keys on a piano takes up quite a lot of space, you can't fill 88 notes on a single stave. What we do is we use the clefs to signify where we are in the piano effectively, and the treble clef's the squiggly one that you've probably seen on the TV or on really basic tattoos on Pinterest. So it's the most default clef as it sort of occupies the upper and mid range of the register, so the most singable ones that we use frequently. But there are others, for example bass, alto, tenor. But I'd definitely say treble and bass are the 2 most important ones. Left-hand piano, double bass, electric bass, they will all use the bass clef as it most easily represents the range that they work in. So back to our main point, the clef tells us where we are in our range and the stave tells us which notes we're supposed to be playing. You can tell which note you're supposed to be playing depending on which line it sits on or which space it sits in. So if I've done my editing properly, which I hope I have, we should be seeing a C major scale going up the stave. Now, C major is probably the most default scale in music theory, and I'll get to why that is later. So to help people out, I've put the notes with their English counterpart names above them. So they've got the traditional notation on the stave and then the names above so that you can see which one's which, and you can quickly learn which line represents which note. So one of the easiest ways to remember which notes sit on which lines is using mnemonics. Now you have to build the skill to just be able to look at a stave and know which note is which, and it comes with practice, in the same way that when you're reading as a child, you don't instantly recognise letters, you have to practice. But in the meantime, mnemonics are probably the best solution. So the 2 mnemonics that I used to use are face, like the one that holds your nose, and every good boy deserves football, because I'm a big football fan. If you want, you can make up your own mnemonics, and I'm sure there are plenty more out there, but these are just the most default ones that work for me. So we've got all the notes that work within the stave, but now we've got to talk about ledger lines. So how the system works is the notes move up in a space line system. So if we go to the bottom of our stave, we've got the E from every good boy deserves football. If we go to the note below that, it's in a space, it's a D. The note below that's on a ledger line, C. The note below that's on a space, B. Then again another ledger line is added to make A, and we continue downwards to G, F, and E. If we go to the top of our ledger line, the F from football, and then work upwards, we sit on a space for G, another ledger line for A, then another one for B, another one for C, another one for D, so on and so forth. So those mnemonics were for treble clef. If we move to bass clef, which is probably the most common clef besides that, everything changes. Not to scare you, but it does. So all of a sudden, everything's moved down a whole space, or a whole line, depending on how you want to think about it. So our mnemonics don't work anymore. So the 2 we're going to use now are all cows eat grass for the spaces, and the lines are good bikes don't fall apart. However, it's the same basic principle of space line, so the ledger line system works exactly the same, it's just everything's moved down. The reason we do this is because it helps fit in better with the ranges of the instruments that typically use this clef. Going back to the piano, has 88 keys. Now we have 26 letters in the English alphabet, so all of a sudden you can see a problem with naming. Now this is the reason we use the first 7 letters of the alphabet. So when you look at a grand piano in a bit more detail, you can see why this is. So the system of black and white notes actually repeats once every 12 notes. So this is what's known as an octave, and they repeat up and down the piano, and each of the notes within an octave has its own unique name. So the first 7 letters of the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, represent the white notes, and the black notes are sharps and flats. So how the sharp and flat system works is that sharp notes go up in pitch and flat notes go down in pitch. So if you look at the stave next to me, all of the notes are on the same line. However, we've got 3 unique notes. So the first one is A, then A sharp, then A again because we've gone back down, and that's signified by that natural symbol, and then A flat. So if you hear that, So what this means in regards to the line and space system is that two notes can actually occupy the same line or space, and this does work because we use the flat symbol, the crooked B, or the sharp symbol to signify that they've moved slightly up or down in pitch, or that they've moved up one semitone or down one semitone on a piano. So another place that sharps and flats can occur is actually at the front of a stave, just before the clef. So if we're in treble clef and you have one flat on the B line at the start of the stave, we know that all the B's from this point onwards need to be flattened, so we don't need to write flats everywhere. Likewise, if we're in treble clef and we have one sharp on the F line, we know that all of the F's, doesn't matter which octave they sit in by the way, so it can be the top line or the first space, but all F's from now on need to be sharpened. And the reason we do this is it's like a musical shorthand, so we don't need to write 1,000,001 sharps and 1,000,001 flats. It's known as a key signature, and I'm definitely going to go into some more detail about this in another video. So to recap, we've got the stave, 5 horizontal lines which tell us which notes are which. We've got the ledger lines, which increase the range of the stave, making it a bit more useful. The clef tells us where we're working in our range and actually informs which notes go where on the stave, so that's probably the most important bit. And then finally we have accidentals, the sharps, which increase notes by a semitone, and the flats, which decrease notes by a semitone. So this is the end of the video. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, tell me what I should do next, and please keep your eye on the channel for future updates and lessons.